heard the term fair trade? Do you know what it means? Do you know who it's fair for or how it works? Is it actually being fair to the people it claims to be? Well, in today's episode, we're going to address each one of these questions, and we're going to see how fair trade allows us to combat human trafficking by doing something we already do. Before we can discuss fair trade, we need to define it. I think the simplest way to define what fair trade is comes from the Equal Exchange website, which states that fair trade is a way of doing business that ultimately aims to keep small farmers an active part of the world marketplace and aims to empower consumers to make purchases that support their values. To get a better understanding of what all this means, let's look at the origins of the fair trade movement. In the 1950s, tourists from developed countries looking to help local struggling business owners of non-developed countries helped set up the first fair trade initiatives. These initiatives were based on direct relations between organizations in the global north, whose core mission was fair trade, and producer organizations in the global south. Today, these initiatives are still supported by the World Fair Trade Organization, commonly known as the WFTO network, which is made up of the pioneering groups of fair trade called alternative trading organizations. Pioneering organizations include shops like 10,000 Villages and other shops and stores that exist to ensure that fair practices focus on and benefit farmers and workers. Since the end of the 1980s, fair trade actors have been able to use a new resource, the label, which has facilitated a wider distribution of products. The first organization to use a label to designate a product as being fair trade produced was a Dutch organization in 1987. This group has developed into the modern organization Fair Trade International. In 2001, a consensus was reached by the actors of the global fair trade movement, and according to this consensus, the first international definition of fair trade was given, which is still used today. This vision was reaffirmed with the International Fair Trade Charter in 2018. And while there is a consensus among pioneering organizations on what fair trade is, the term fair trade is subject to few legal safeguards, which makes it open to a variety of interpretations and methods of implementation from different organizations, companies, and governments. France is one of the few countries in which fair trade has a legal definition. The development and increasing popularity of fair trade has progressively led to the emergence of differing standpoints. For example, the introduction of large plantations with many hired workers has highlighted the conflict between the goal of extending the range and volume of fair trade products and building a benefit for hired workers, and on the other hand, that of preserving small farms and shops and family agriculture. In its simplest form, the fair trade process consists of businesses applying for certification to the organization they want to be affiliated with. This can cost the company a fee to have the organization review the practices and conditions of the applying business. Upon being approved, the company will be able to produce goods with a fair trade label to let consumers know where they should put their dollars to support the fight against inequality. Importantly, different organizations claiming that the products they certify are fairly traded have varying standards from one another. I will detail the specifics of several organizations and compare these differences in just a minute. But first, I want to detail how fair trade products can affect human trafficking. Supporting certified sellers and companies ensures that these businesses continue upholding specified standards where people are not exploited. These benefits include protecting workers' rights, ensuring fair pay, and in some cases, additional help to provide services and resources to the community where the workers live. Purchasing items that are fair trade tells companies that we value fair products more than cheaper products that are made for us, brought to us, prepared for us on the backs of individuals who are coerced, forced, and exploited in a modern day slavery to produce cheaper food and consumer goods. Looking at the food side of fair trade, we know that we all buy or sell goods like coffee, sugar, and fresh produce every day. Whether you're shopping at your local grocery store, choosing your favorite bar of chocolate, or are a coffee roaster picking beans, or a fruit trader sourcing bananas, we all participate in the global supply chains that ultimately start with a farm. Fair trade labels are a practical way to help you know that those farmers got a fair deal in growing their goods. There are more than 600 organizations that certify something about our food and consumer products. Some of these labels address human trafficking via the fair trade emphasis on workers' rights, while others have vastly different goals and do nothing to ensure that individuals are receiving fair compensation and are not being threatened, forced, or coerced into laboring. Specifically, corporate labels seem to be especially nefarious in how they create and maintain their own certifications and labels. According to the International Guide to Fair Trade Labels 2020 edition, many articles on certification open with a question or a statement about labeling fatigue, which looks at how so many of us are overwhelmed or confused by all the certifications and labels out there. But the reality is, this confusion isn't an accident. It's in the best interest of the many corporate marketers who create new labels and new ad campaigns to keep people confused. These corporate led or corporate developed labels exist to put a stamp of approval on the supply chain but not make a change. Some of the corporations that have opted to create their own certifications and labeling standards instead of seeking approval through a third party organization include Mondelez, Nestle, Nespresso, and Starbucks. Each of these organizations has created their own standards and decided independently how they would ensure those standards were being met. As of today, only Starbucks details how they monitor working conditions, and they are the only company that shares their transparency information online. So, while I can't say for sure, it sure seems like the other companies have something to hide. Okay, now that we have defined what fair trade is, understand how the process works, and learned about corporations creating bogus labels to confuse us, let's take a look at some legitimate organizations. Fair for Life is an organization that has been around since 2006. This organization's certification is open to operations from different sectors worldwide and combines three kinds of requirements along the supply chain: environmental responsibility, social responsibility, and fair trade. Fair for Life is today a complete and professional fair trade standard according to the International Guide of Fair Trade Labels. This organization certifies more than 500 products. Looking at equal exchange, this is the oldest organization involved in bringing fair trade products to consumers mentioned in this video. Since 1986, this group has been extremely dedicated to working with small farms. While they are a relatively small organization with just over 100 employees, they have managed to create an interfaith program that has helped put fair trade coffee into 10,000 congregations all over the U.S. Additionally, they own 90% of Oki USA, the only 100% fair trade fruit company in the country, according to the company's website. Moving on, we look at Nest. Nest is a nonprofit that was created by Rebecca Van Bergen in 2006 when she was just 24 years old and fresh out of grad school. The organization's main goal looks to include women in the workforce by means of handworker economy. The handworker economy is a part of crafting, which is the second largest employer of women in emerging economies. According to the International Labor Organization, there may be as many as 300 million people working out of their homes around the world. Within Nest standards, they directly aim for transparency in worker treatment and rate of pay while attempting to establish a market demand for their fair produced products. Next, we go to WRAP. According to the organization's website, WRAP is a nonprofit based in Virginia and has been in existence since the year 2000, when it was formed out of the desire to create an independent and objective body to help apparel and footwear factories around the world verify that they are operating in compliance with local laws and internationally accepted standards of ethical workplace practices. Currently, WRAP has certified more than 2,000 facilities that employ 2 million workers that produce various types of footwear and other textiles. WRAP ensures their products are produced fairly by requiring factories to embrace the 12 principles of the organization that were formed by using International Labor Organization standards for ethical workplace treatment. I'm happy to say that the second principle states that facilities will not use involuntary, forced, or trafficked labor. To make sure factories are producing labor trafficking free products, WRAP performs all of their audits unannounced. This is critically important as it does not give the factory a warning that they will be inspected. So, if they wish to be RAP certified, they will need to be in compliance all the time. RAP has also taken great lengths to ensure objectivity by having a board of directors that is independent of the fashion world. To maintain financial independence, RAP does not receive government grants or donations and is funded solely by the registration fees paid by factories in the certification program, as well by revenues generated through their training program. Next, we look at UTS and Rainforest Alliance, which is currently going through the process of combining the two organizations into a single organization with one certification standard. So let's look at each organization individually up to this point. First, we have Rainforest Alliance, which is a nonprofit that claims to have 2 million farmers using their standards in 60 countries around the world. This organization has been in existence since 1987 and is mainly focused on the treatment of the planet and ensuring sustainable processes are used in food production. As of now, the organization does not enforce a fair price or fair compensation to workers, but they are working with UTS to define both a living wage and living income for both farmers and workers alike. Being that they affect so many workers, this is definitely something to track into the future. Turning to UTS, we find an organization focused on sustainable farming since its inception in 2002. Based in the Netherlands, UTS certifies more than 1 million farms around the world, affecting 300,000 workers in 42 countries on their certified farms. You can buy UTS and Rainforest Alliance's 15,000 certified products in over 130 different countries. Together, they certify 7 million hectares of land. A hectare is roughly equal to about 2.47 acres. Or you can think of that as 100 hectares equals 1 square kilometer. So, UTS and Rainforest Alliance certify that more than 17 million acres are being maintained in a sustainable way, and the individuals working on this land are being treated humanely, and at some point in the future, they will require all the workers to be paid a fair wage. With 1 million acres equaling about 1,600 square miles, this means that throughout the world, UTS and Rainforest Alliance certify 27,000 square miles of land, or an area big enough to contain Rhode Island, Delaware, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and New Jersey at the same time. So if this organization can get the living wage and fair income right, and ensure proper audits are conducted so that compliance with standards is not a concern, this will create a multi-state sized area that ensures nobody becomes a human trafficking victim within its borders. Looking at Fairtrade USA, we find an organization that has been around since 1998 and contains the familiar term Fairtrade within its naming. This is similar to its former partner in the Fairtrade initiative, Fairtrade International. However, Fairtrade USA split from Fairtrade International in 2011. The split occurred in part because of disagreements about whether to maintain the tradition of limiting fair trade certification to smallholder producers in limited products such as coffee and tea, or to expand certification to large estates with hired workers. As of today, Fairtrade USA certifies goods that are imported into the U.S. from 45 countries, while attempting to ensure 950,000 workers worldwide are empowered and treated fairly. Fairtrade USA retains the fair trade premiums that Fairtrade International pioneered and continues to use to this day. These premiums are an additional amount given to workers and farmers for projects or services that will help to benefit the community. Fairtrade USA started researching the feasibility of certifying apparel factories as early as 2006. It conducted pilot studies in 2010 to 2012 and subsequently launched their apparel and home goods standards. This makes it possible to now buy a range of products that are certified by Fairtrade USA that are not food. In 2016, they certified their first Fairtrade certified farm in the United States, which was Wholesome Harvest in southern Arizona. And between 2011 and 2015, the organization's impact grew from $79 million to $203 million. So while Fairtrade USA has grown and expanded quickly, there has been some criticisms thrown their way by others in the fair trade community. These criticisms include issues with a lack of worker representation, payments, and certifying farms that had previous issues with abuse and mistreatment. These claims and issues are certainly worth considering when choosing which fair trade product you want or deciding which label best aligns with your own philosophy. For myself, I think Fairtrade USA has good intentions and are working towards addressing these issues and other issues. I also support the idea of expanding the fair trade concept to larger farms and corporations, as Fairtrade USA has done, and many would agree with me and argue that fair trade is meant to represent and protect small farmers. I see Fairtrade USA making it possible for more retailers and companies to offer a greater range of products that offer a degree of social responsibility for the consumer and considering the workers on a larger scale than would be possible by just focusing on small farms. I will keep my eye on Fairtrade USA and track their progress and efforts now that they are close to 10 years separated from Fairtrade International to see if, as their own independent organization, they can make the necessary adjustments to protect the workers and farmers at the factory and plantation levels. Next, we look at Fairtrade International. And even though I have already stated that Fairtrade USA and Fairtrade International are two separate organizations, I feel this is a good point to reiterate they have different standards and protections and rights for the workers on their farms and factories. I also want to show the difference in labels so that when you are at the store or shopping online, you know which one represents which organization and subsequently supports that organization's mission and process of bringing fair trade products to consumers. Here you can see Fairtrade International's main label that they've been using since 1997, when the organization was first formed. They also have these other labels that certify certain ingredients are sourced as fair trade products. This allows a specific ingredient in food or piece of a garment and clothing to be fair trade, while the rest of the product is not. Here is Fairtrade USA's main label since 2011 when they split to form their own organization. They also developed additional labels to indicate that specific ingredients or processes in the production process are fair trade according to their standards. Again, this allows for products to come to the market that will have a portion of the product being fair trade rather than 100%. I wanted to make sure I shared this information with you so you could make as informed a decision as possible when considering what fair trade meant to you and which organization you wanted to support. Seeing Fairtrade certified on a package could easily be mistaken as Fairtrade International, and seeing Fairtrade America on a product might be assumed to be Fairtrade USA. So hopefully this helps to sort out the similarities between these two organizations' labels. Okay, now that we got all that sorted out, let's look at Fairtrade International. The Fairtrade International mark is the most widely recognized ethical certification label globally, according to a 2015 GlobeScan research report. Trust in the Fairtrade International mark remains consistently strong at 69%, with three-quarters of respondents associating the mark with helping farmers escape poverty. This nonprofit organization has been setting the standard in addressing inequality since 1997 and, as of today, helps to ensure 1.7 million farmers and workers are protected from being labor trafficking victims and paid a fair rate. Fairtrade International gets high praise from those who see fair trade certification needing to represent small farms because most of the 1.7 million workers are affiliated with small producers, roughly 1.5 million, while only 193,000 or so work with certified plantations. Fairtrade International's presence is spread across 75 countries and helps to connect consumers with more than 30,000 products that meet Fairtrade International standards of fair trade. These standards are created using International Labor Organization and United Nations standards to define forced labor as modern slavery. Fairtrade International producers are required to organize collectively in cooperatives or workers' organizations with a democratic structure and transparent administration. So they have a greater bargaining power and control over their business. This helps to make Fairtrade International one of the few global sustainability standards which is equally owned and managed by producers for producers. Lastly, I want to mention the Fairtrade Premium. The fair trade premium is an extra sum of money paid on top of the selling price that farmers or workers invest in projects of their choice. They decide together and democratically how to spend the fair trade premium to reach their goals, such as improving their farming, business, or health and education in the community. Farmers and workers know best what their priorities and needs are, so Fairtrade International puts the money and power in their hands. Completing our list is the World Fair Trade Organization. While this is the last organization on the list, it is definitely not the least. In 1999, a small group of alternative trade organizations established the World Fair Trade Organization, originally named the International Federation for Alternative Trade, to facilitate the exchange of information and ideas about fair trade. The original members were largely focused on supporting marginalized handicraft artisans in the global south to gain market access in the global north. The WFTO has since focused on supporting organizations committed to fair trade values. The WFTO helps support organizations from 76 countries and in 2004 began requiring members to evaluate themselves and evaluate others within the organization and applicants against the fair trade principles. By 2013, the WFTO added third-party auditing and began allowing WFTO members to use the mark, which is essentially a label, directly on their products. This was almost certainly a response to the rise in other labels coming to market and the WFTO wanting to ensure that their standard of fair trade was fairly represented in the global marketplace. While the WFTO is intent on representing small farmers and worker safety and equality in pay, it is surprising that they do not mention using surprise audits to ensure their standard of fair trade is being met. That being said, the WFTO standard is strict that organizations using the label meet International Labor Organization standards within 1 year and require fair wages by year 2. And these are both good industry standards. The easiest way to find these products is online, by going to any of these organizations' websites. They will provide you with links and or lists to the companies who sell products certified by the organization. Additionally, the grocery stores in my area have a range of fair trade products distributed throughout the stores, as most stores don't have an ethically sourced area, at least as far as I've experienced. If you're looking for clothing that was not produced from labor trafficking victims, you'll have to go to specific stores and look for certain brands and remember the labels we covered here today and see if they are present as you shop. Additionally, endslaverynow.org has an excellent shopping guide to help you get started on the process, or you can feel free to check the organizational websites as previously mentioned. Some of the clothing companies that I have personally purchased fair trade products from include Naked, Patagonia, Pact, and Prana. I have purchased many food products that are fair trade that range from fair trade molasses and sugar to fair trade couscous and coffee. Look for the independent organizations that verify. Remember, there are many different standards from one to the next, and some of those specifics were mentioned in this episode. Definitely be leery of corporate initiatives, especially those that do not state what the standards are or offer any degree of reasonable transparency. I would go as far as saying those types of certifications and initiatives are not fair trade at all and do nothing to ensure human trafficking or inequality is being kept out of the supply lines. Some organization affiliation to look for would be the WFTO, the World Fair Trade Organization, whose members are dedicated to fair trade. Membership of this network is proof of legitimacy of their fair trade credentials. Additionally, Fair Trade Project and Fair Trade Federation offer easy access to true fair trade products. While organization affiliation can make identifying legitimate companies easier, always being willing to do a little research is the only way to ensure you are choosing the certification process that you are okay with. Some focus more on better treatment for workers, others on equal pay, some ensure premiums to improve communal life. Still others are fronts set up by corporations to appear as fair trade labels or even as ethical labels, when in fact they may be nothing more than an effort to overwhelm and confuse consumers. So if you're looking to buy fair trade clothes, your two main options will be Fairtrade USA and Fairtrade International. I already detailed about both of these organizations, but there is a lot more to be said and learned about each of them. They each have publications available on their websites to help make anyone interested more informed on their day-to-day operations, standards, and more. Also, at some point in the future, I'm planning to do a Fairtrade International and Fairtrade USA comparison episode, so keep on the lookout for that if you're looking for more information on these two organizations. Well, that's all for this episode of Human Trafficking Hater. I know that was a lot of information about Fairtrade and some of the organizations involved in the movement, but I'd like to hear from you what you think about Fairtrade as a way to combat human trafficking. Do you think there's an organization that is better than another? Have you used Fairtrade products, or are you just hearing about them for the first time today? I've personally been buying Fairtrade products for years, so I'm really interested to see what experiences you all have had down in the comments. Thank you for listening to Human Trafficking Hater. If you're interested in getting more content about human trafficking, how to address it, and how it impacts millions around the world, please subscribe and join us as we continue to hate human trafficking and raise awareness.